I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened in that house. My cat saved my life, but not in the way you'd think. When I finally understood what Jasper had been trying to show me, it was almost too late. It started 3 months after I moved into the farmhouse outside Millbrook, Iowa. I'd bought the place cheap, one of those deals that seems too good to be true, you know? A 2-story colonial with peeling white paint, sitting on 5 acres of overgrown fields. The real estate agent said the previous owner had died of natural causes, an old woman who'd lived there alone for 40 years. I didn't ask many questions. I was desperate to leave the city, to find some peace after the divorce, and the isolation felt like exactly what I needed. I brought Jasper, my orange tabby, and we settled into what I thought would be a quiet new chapter. The first month was perfect. I worked from home, doing freelance graphic design, and the silence was therapeutic. Jasper adapted quickly, claiming the sunlit windowsill in the kitchen as his throne. He'd sit there for hours, tail swishing lazily, watching the cornfields sway in the wind. At night he'd curl up at the foot of my bed, purring like a small motor. Everything felt normal, safe even. But then October came, and with it, the cold. I remember the exact moment things changed. It was a Tuesday evening around 7 o'clock. I was at my desk in the spare bedroom I'd converted into an office working on a logo design when I noticed Jasper in the doorway. He wasn't looking at me. His green eyes were fixed on the corner of the room behind me, up near the ceiling where the walls met. His pupils had dilated into perfect black circles, and his ears were flat against his skull. I'd never seen him look like that before, not scared exactly, but intensely focused, like he was tracking something invisible. The fur along his spine had risen into a ridge. "What is it, buddy?" I asked, turning to look at the empty corner. There was nothing there, just yellowed wallpaper with a faded floral pattern and a cobweb I'd been meaning to clean. But Jasper didn't move. He stayed frozen, staring for a full minute, before finally backing away slowly and disappearing down the hallway. The temperature in the room felt different somehow, cooler, and I caught myself rubbing my arms. I tried to shake it off, told myself he'd probably seen a spider or a moth, but something about his reaction stayed with me. Cats see things we don't, right? That's what people say. I just didn't know how true that was. The staring incidents became daily occurrences. Jasper would stop mid-stride in the hallway, fix his gaze on empty air, and watch something move across the wall. Sometimes he'd follow it with his head, tracking left to right, up and down. Other times he'd sit at the bottom of the stairs and stare up at the second-floor landing for 20-30 minutes at a time. His tail would twitch, his whiskers would quiver, but he never made a sound, never hissed or growled. That silence was worse somehow, more unsettling than if he'd been freaking out. It was like he was observing something, studying it, and I was the idiot who couldn't see what was right in front of me. I started paying attention to where he looked. The corner of my office, the landing at the top of the stairs, the doorway to the master bedroom, the space behind the rocking chair in the living room that had come with the house. Always the same spots, like there were invisible markers only he could see. I'd walk over to those places and feel nothing. Well, not nothing. Sometimes the air felt thicker, harder to breathe, and occasionally I'd catch a smell, sweet and rotten at the same time, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. But there was never anything to see. Then the objects started falling. Small things at first. A coffee mug sliding off the kitchen counter while I was in the next room. I heard the crash, came running, found ceramic shards scattered across the tile floor. The mug had been sitting in the center of the counter, nowhere near the edge. I cleaned it up, blamed myself for placing it carelessly, and forgot about it. 2 days later, a picture frame fell off the wall in the hallway. Not the kind of thing that happens naturally. This frame had been hung securely. I'd checked it myself. The nail was still in the wall, undamaged, but the frame had somehow lifted off and landed face down 3 feet away. The glass had spiderweb cracks across the surface. The photo inside showed the previous owner, the old woman, standing in front of this very house. Her face was obscured by the cracks. I found Jasper sitting at the end of the hallway, staring at the spot where the frame had hung. His tail was puffed up to twice its normal size. Books started sliding off shelves in the middle of the night. I'd wake to the sound of them hitting the floor. Thud, 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 3 or 4 at a time. I'd go downstairs with my heart hammering, flip on the lights and find them scattered on the living room floor, pages splayed open. Always in the same area, near that rocking chair. Once, I found them arranged in a semicircle, perfectly spaced, as if someone had placed them deliberately. My hands shook as I picked them up. Jasper sat on the stairs watching me, and I swear to God there was something knowing in his eyes, something that said he understood what was happening, even if I didn't. The temperature drop started around the same time. I'd be sitting at my computer and suddenly I could see my breath. The thermostat would read 72 degrees, but my teeth would be chattering. These cold spots moved through the house like living things. I'd feel one pass through me sometimes, walking from one room to another, a bone-deep chill that made my muscles seize up for just a second before it was gone. Jasper always reacted when this happened. He'd stop whatever he was doing. His whole body would go rigid and he'd watch the cold spot move away, following it with those unblinking green eyes. I tried to rationalize everything. Old houses settle. Temperature fluctuations are normal in buildings with poor insulation. Cats have weird behaviors. I was stressed from work, sleeping poorly, probably imagining half of it. But rationalization became harder when the footsteps started. Heavy, deliberate steps on the floor above me when I was downstairs. Always at night. Always moving from the master bedroom to the landing, then stopping. Just stopping, standing there. I could feel the weight of something waiting at the top of those stairs. Some nights I'd lie in bed. I'd moved to the downstairs guest room by then, couldn't bring myself to sleep upstairs anymore. And I'd hear those footsteps pacing back and forth, for hours. Jasper would be under the bed, pressed against the wall, and when I'd reach down to touch him, his fur would be standing on end. The scratching sounds came next, inside the walls, long dragging scratches that moved up and down, like fingernails on wood. I called an exterminator, convinced myself it was rats or raccoons. The guy came out, did a thorough inspection, found nothing. No droppings, no nests, no entry points, no evidence of any animal activity whatsoever. He looked at me like I was wasting his time. After he left, the scratching got worse, louder, more insistent. It would start around 2 in the morning and continue until dawn. I'd sit up in bed listening to it travel through the walls, and Jasper would be sitting on the dresser, staring at the wall, tilting his head like he was listening to something I couldn't quite hear. I started seeing things in my peripheral vision, dark shapes that would dart across doorways, a figure standing at the end of the hallway that would vanish when I turned to look directly at it, shadows that moved independently of any light source. At first I thought it was exhaustion. I wasn't sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night. But then I'd catch Jasper staring at the exact spot where I'd just seen something, and I knew. I knew it wasn't just me. The dreams started in the 2nd month, nightmares where I'd wake up, or think I was waking up, and see a woman standing at the foot of my bed. She was old, impossibly thin, with skin like parchment and eyes that were just black pits in her skull. Her mouth would open too wide, wider than any human mouth should open, and I'd hear this sound come out. Not a scream, but something worse. A wet, rattling breath that sounded like it was coming from underwater. I'd try to move, try to scream, but I'd be paralyzed, frozen, unable to do anything but watch as she leaned closer and closer. Then I'd actually wake up, gasping, drenched in sweat, and Jasper would be on my chest staring at the foot of the bed where she'd been standing in the dream. Every single time. I started researching the house's history, public records, old newspaper archives, anything I could find online. The previous owner was named Eleanor Marsh. She'd lived in the house since 1978, alone after her husband died. No children, no close relatives. The neighbors I talked to, the few who lived within a few miles, said she'd been a strange woman, kept to herself, was seen talking to empty rooms sometimes. One old farmer told me people used to cross the street to avoid walking past her property. Something not right about that place, he said. Never was. He wouldn't elaborate. I found one article from 1995. Eleanor Marsh had been questioned in connection with the disappearance of a traveling salesman who'd last been seen heading toward her property. Nothing was ever proven. No charges filed. The man was never found. I read that article sitting at my kitchen table at midnight, and I felt the temperature drop so suddenly I could see frost forming on the window. Jasper was sitting on top of the refrigerator, staring at the doorway to the living room, and I knew without looking that something was standing there. I forced myself not to turn around. I just sat there, frozen, watching Jasper watch it, until finally the cold lifted and Jasper's posture relaxed. Things escalated in the third month. Objects didn't just fall anymore, they flew. A plate launched itself across the kitchen and shattered against the wall while I was standing right there. A lamp crashed to the floor in the living room, the bulb exploding. My laptop was knocked off my desk with such force it cracked the screen. I'd hear doors slamming throughout the house, all of them, one after another, like something was moving through the rooms in a rage. Jasper would run and hide during these episodes, wedging himself under furniture. But he'd always be watching, always tracking something I couldn't see. The whispers started, barely audible at first, like the house itself was muttering. I'd be in the kitchen and hear a voice from the living room, nothing I could understand, just low, urgent whispering. I'd walk toward it and it would stop, then start up again behind me. It was playing with me. I realized that one night when I heard it say my name, David Didi, drawn out, sibilant, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Jasper's response was immediate. He jumped onto my lap, something he never did, and stared over my shoulder at the space behind me. His claws dug into my legs through my jeans. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I tried to leave, packed a bag, grabbed Jasper's carrier, headed for the door. But when I reached for the doorknob, it was ice cold, cold enough to burn my palm. The door wouldn't open. I yanked on it, put all my weight into it, but it wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. The mechanism turned freely, but the door itself felt like it was sealed shut. I ran to the back door, same thing. Windows wouldn't open more than an inch before jamming. I was trapped. I stood in the kitchen, heart racing, and heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy steps, coming down the stairs, one at a time. Jasper was yowling, a sound I'd never heard him make, and I grabbed him and we ran to the bathroom on the first floor. I locked the door, wedged a towel under the gap at the bottom, and sat in the bathtub with Jasper pressed against my chest. The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom door. I heard breathing, wet, labored breathing. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then silence. We stayed there until morning. When dawn came, the door opened easily. I walked through the house in the thin morning light, and everything looked normal, peaceful even. But I knew better now. I couldn't leave, and whatever was here with me was getting stronger. Jasper stayed close to me all day, literally following at my heels, and I understood. He'd been trying to warn me all along. He'd been seeing it, watching it, tracking its movements through the house. He'd known. That night I decided to try something. I set up my phone to record video in the living room, pointing it at that rocking chair. I went to bed but didn't sleep, just lay there listening. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the chair start to creak, the rhythmic squeak of wood on wood, someone rocking slowly back and forth. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the living room. The chair was moving, rocking by itself, and sitting on the floor next to it was Jasper, staring up at the chair like he could see someone sitting there. I looked at my phone. The recording showed the chair moving, but there was something else. A dark, distorted shape in the seat, not quite human, too tall, too thin, but roughly person-shaped, and it was looking at the camera, looking at me. I grabbed the phone and ran back to the bedroom. I sent the video to myself, to the cloud, to everywhere I could think of. I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Then I heard the scratching again, but this time it wasn't in the walls. It was on my bedroom door. Long, slow scratches, like fingernails dragging down the wood. Jasper jumped on the bed, positioned himself between me and the door, and did something that chilled me more than anything else. He hissed, not at the door, but at the corner of the room, the same corner he'd been staring at that first night. And I saw it. I finally saw what he'd been seeing all along. She was standing there, Eleanor Marsh, or what was left of her, a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness, vaguely woman-shaped but wrong in every proportion, too tall, limbs too long, head tilted at an angle that would break a living person's neck, and those eyes, they weren't black pits like in my dreams. They were there, they were real, and they were looking at me with such hatred, such hunger, that I felt my bladder almost let go. Her mouth opened, that same impossible width, and I heard that underwater breathing sound, but also words. "Mine," she said. "Mine, mine, mine." The room exploded into chaos. Every object that wasn't nailed down flew through the air. My lamp, books, clothes, everything becoming projectiles. I threw myself to the floor, covering my head, and felt things striking my back, my arms. Through it all, I heard Jasper. Not hissing anymore, but making this guttural, almost human sound. A battle cry. I looked up and saw him on the dresser, fur completely on end, making himself as big as possible, staring down that thing in the corner. And the thing, it hesitated, it actually hesitated. That's when I understood. She couldn't fully manifest, couldn't fully cross over as long as something living was actively resisting her. Jasper had been doing this the whole time, watching her, tracking her, standing guard, keeping her at bay just by acknowledging her presence and refusing to back down. His attention was a tether somehow, a barrier. When he stared at her, she couldn't quite solidify, and now, in this moment, he was protecting me. The attack stopped as suddenly as it started. The shadow retreated into the corner, becoming less defined, and the temperature began to rise. Jasper stayed on the dresser, not relaxing, maintaining his vigil. I realized I was sobbing. My back was bleeding where something sharp had hit me, but I was alive. I didn't sleep that night, neither did Jasper. We stayed there, both of us watching that corner, and I felt an absurd wave of gratitude for this 12-pound cat who'd been trying to save me from something I'd been too blind to see. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't leave through the doors or windows, but I could call for help. I managed to get a call through to a local priest, Father Martinez at St. Anthony's in town. I told him everything, showed him the video. To his credit, he didn't dismiss me. He'd heard stories about the Marsh house, he said. He'd heard Eleanor Marsh had dabbled in things she shouldn't have, had tried to open doors that were meant to stay closed. He agreed to come. Father Martinez arrived that afternoon with holy water, blessed salt, and a certainty that made me feel less insane. Jasper took to him immediately, which I took as a good sign. We moved through the house room by room, the priest praying, blessing each space. Eleanor's presence fought back. Doors slammed, objects fell. The temperature plummeted so severely we could see ice forming on the inside of the windows. But Father Martinez didn't stop. In the master bedroom, the room I hadn't entered in weeks, we found something. Behind a loose board in the closet, there was a space. And in that space, there were items, personal items, a wallet, a watch, a wedding ring that didn't match Eleanor's husband's description. The missing salesman. There were others too. Driver's licenses, keys, small totems from people who'd probably stopped by this isolated farmhouse and never left. She kept them, Father Martinez said quietly. She kept pieces of them to maintain her hold on this place. We burned everything in the backyard, the priest praying over the fire. The screaming started then. Not from any human throat, but from the house itself. Every window rattled. The chimney belched black smoke. And I saw her, fully manifested for the first time in daylight, standing at the second-floor window. Her face pressed against the glass, mouth open in that silent scream, hands clawing at the window. Jasper sat on the porch railing, watching her, and I swear he looked satisfied. The fire consumed the last item, and Eleanor's figure shattered like glass. The windows went silent. The house settled with a long final groan, and the air changed. It felt lighter. Clean. Father Martinez completed the blessing, salted every threshold, and told me the house should be safe now. She was gone. I lived there for another 2 months just to be sure. The house was different. Jasper went back to being a normal cat, sleeping in sunbeams, chasing moths, ignoring empty corners. No more staring, no more standing guard. The objects stayed where I put them. The temperature remained constant. The nightmares stopped. But I couldn't stay. Too many memories, too much residual fear. I sold the house to a developer who planned to tear it down and build something new. I felt good about that. Before I left, I stood in that living room one last time with Jasper in my arms. "How you knew?" I told him, scratching behind his ears. "You knew the whole time." He purred and headbutted my chin. "We live in a small apartment in Des Moines now. 3rd floor, lots of neighbors, never quiet. It's perfect." Jasper has claimed the windowsill in the bedroom, and sometimes I catch him staring outside, but he's just watching birds. Normal cat behavior. Still, sometimes late at night, I'll wake up and see him sitting at the foot of the bed, looking at the doorway, and my heart will start racing. But then he'll yawn or groom himself or come curl up next to me, and I'll remember. We're safe, we survived. People ask me if I believe in ghosts now. I tell them I believe in a lot of things I didn't before. I believe houses can hold on to darkness. I believe some people leave more than memories when they die. And I believe that sometimes salvation comes on 4 paws with green eyes and orange fur, watching over you even when you're too stupid to know you need protecting. Jasper saved my life, not by fighting, not by alerting me in any conventional way, but by being present, by bearing witness, by refusing to look away from what was there. He taught me that acknowledgement is a form of power, that attention can be a weapon, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply see what's in front of you and not flinch. I still have that video on my phone. I've never deleted it, though I've never shown it to anyone except Father Martinez. Sometimes, when I'm doubting myself, wondering if it really happened, I'll pull it up and watch. The rocking chair moving by itself, the dark shape that shouldn't exist, and in the corner of the frame always Jasper sitting there, keeping watch, standing guard. He's sleeping next to me on the couch right now as I write this. Just a cat, just my friend. Just the reason I'm alive to tell this story. I owe him everything. And I promise you this, I will never, ever ignore it when he stares at empty air again. Because I know now, I know what he's looking at, and I know that sometimes the scariest thing in the world isn't what you can see. It's what you've been refusing to see all along.